My dear old friend, with Sony's recent departure of PS3 Games of the Month, I think it's finally time to bury the hatchet with you.
I mean, it's not broken or anything. You still plug it in and get some use out of it. There's no...
No, dude, just... No, dude. There's no more PS3 Games of the Month, so what am I going to do with it now? There's no use for this thing.
There's plenty of fucking use for it. You can homebrew it, you can play your old games, you can get some new games for cheap. Throwing it away is a waste of money and resources.
But I don't want to take the time to switch the inputs every time I feel like playing this thing.
That's just... There's no excuse. Even laziness. You can just get one of those splitter boxes, you just have to press a fucking button and it just switches over. There's no excuse.
I guess you're right.
Yeah.
Who am I kidding? Why would I get rid of this thing? You know what? I could probably make a video about this or something.
You should make a video about it. Make a whole script and everything. I'll probably help
out.
Script? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna go to my room though. Bye. You have fun with that.
I will.
The year is 2005, a year that would end up being a massive change to the gaming industry as a whole, and with E3 around the corner, it was time for our leading console heads, Microsoft and Sony, to tease what would be the future of gaming for what would be the next decade or so. With Microsoft having a head start releasing the Xbox 360 in the same year as its reveal.
We have truly expanded the entertainment universe with Xbox 360. Xbox 360 Guide, it is your launch pad to all of your digital entertainment.
Sony had something up their sleeves as well, but that wouldn't end up coming out until 2006. But we were still able to get a peek at what exactly Sony was up to. They gave us a lot of promise, but ultimately didn't reach their true vision with the final product released to the public.
Their E3 presentation, upon myself reviewing it, was actually pretty good. Sony was really pulling all the stops with this thing.
They were doing some pretty innovative stuff with their hardware, at least for the time. A console that supported built-in Wi-Fi, Blu-ray support to watch movies at ultra high quality, a free online service, backwards compatibility and specs that were way too ambitious for its time, but they probably didn't foresee some of the underlying problems that would haunt the PlayStation 3 in its first few years. But we'll get to that later. Our presentation starts off with the now chairman of PlayStation, Kaz Hirai, introducing what he would call the
digital decade. So let's take a look at what that will look like.
And from there, we're flooded with an info dump explaining just what the hell the PS3 was going to be, and what the cell processor was. This is a very different E3 than what we get now. The cell architecture was the horsepower behind the PlayStation 3. It was essentially 7 microprocessors on one chip, and I'll be honest, I don't really know what all that means, but basically that allowed the console to perform several operations at once, which meant more power, more quality, and more polygons! Ken Kuragi, the former CEO of Sony Computer Entertainment and the brainchild of PlayStation, challenged Nvidia to make this meaty piece of tech. With this, it took game developers some getting used to, as companies were already developing games on the Xbox 360. The PS3 was a whole new monster, and learning how to develop games on an entirely different console would take some time and experimentation to get familiar with. Even though this cell processor made the PS3 the most powerful console in the market, it proved to be too daunting and frustrating to develop games on it. And what the hell is a console without games? With this spouted the infamous PlayStation has no games memes, and the PS3 for the longest time was dubbed the hard to develop console. With some really notably bad ports like Dragon Age from EA, Skyrim, Fallout 3, and New Vegas, but those are pretty given since bug testing is a foreign task for Bethesda, but they were just extra abysmal on PlayStation 3. The launch of Bayonetta also proved to be a failure for Platinum, as load times were long and the frame rates were choppier compared to its Xbox counterpart, making the Xbox version the preferred one to play. It was later patched and fixed, and honestly for the longest time I thought Bayonetta was only on the Xbox 360. People were remorseless with the PS3, and it really took a toll for Sony when they first revealed the damn price of that thing. It was way too steep for the common family to afford one, sitting at
$599 US.
and with lack of exclusives on launch, it didn't really help its case. They took a big loss on sales and didn't even turn a profit. Their fiscal year goal was expected to be $6 million, and they only ended up turning half of that. It took about 4 long years after launch for Sony to finally make a profit and cover the cost of productions, not at a loss. But this wasn't the end of the bad list of daisy chains giving negative light to the PS3 either. In 2011, PlayStation Network also took a massive hit from hackers, with over 77 million accounts having their personal data leaked online. This was big, this was huge, this was terrible. It took about 23 days to get everything back up and running, with the FBI and the House of Representatives involved. This was a huge hit to cybersecurity on one of the largest scales, and an even bigger hit to Sony's PR. And although Sony wasn't the one to blame, they did get hit with heaps of criticism for delaying a response to its user base. Almost a week after Sony knowing there was a security breach, did they finally decide to tell the public that,
Hi, Richard Trick here, CEO of Sony Entertainment. Just letting you guys know that some of your personal information may or may not have been leaked online, credit card numbers and names among other things, but hey, we acknowledge it.
Sony eventually did end up revamping their infrastructure, and there apparently wasn't any report of credit fraud directly linked to the network outage as far as I can find. Sony eventually compensated its user base with a welcome back program that extended Users Plus subscriptions by 30 days, and you could pick 2 free games to download as well as a couple of other options like 1 year free identity theft protection. This whole fiasco goes way more in depth, and I'm probably not doing it any justice, but I'm not going to dwell on it any further, seeing as this isn't the point of the video. And as much as I'm focusing on all the dirty laundry for this console, there is a happy ending for the PS3, as it made some of the best games of the generation, plus saved itself from being a sinking ship. I just kinda wanted to do a bit of a condensed, broad introduction / history of this console. As the title of the episode states, this is about what the PlayStation 3 means to me, as in why I myself like it. And now with that out of the way, I can explain my sentiments on this thing.
So I say it was around 2014 when I finally got a PS3 for myself. But I didn't really get any mileage on it until at least 2015 when I got a PS4.
I usually always played it through a friend, or I would use my brother's whenever he would visit. I never really had the money to afford one, and I also had a Xbox 360 and a giant game collection to accompany it, which I actually had to sell eventually. But at the time, I was kinda content on not getting a new console. My brother eventually gave me his super slim God of War Ascension PS3 bundle. With its ultra sleek crimson red coat, that's honestly really cool, and red is one of my favorite colors to put on any type of console. With that, I finally got to sit down and play some games for myself. I played as many exclusives as I could by game sharing with a couple of friends. I got to play Infamous and its sequel, which were unique and interesting at the time, but not really for me. God of War 3 was just beautiful to look at, and just as fun to play, with some solid level design, great voice acting, and loads of gore and hyperviolence that I'm all for. I also finally got to play MGS4, as it was one of the early killer apps of the PS3, the game that everyone wanted you to play. If you don't know, I'm kind of a huge fan of the Metal Gear Solid series, as many people are. I was having a blast with that game. It had some of the best improvements to the Metal Gear formula in terms of its gameplay. Even though its story is laughable and answers questions that didn't intend to have answers, I'm looking at you, Patriots. It was still fun through and through. Getting to play all these well-crafted gems on the system, I realized I was falling in love with the PS3. When Yakuza 4 became the free game of the month, I dipped into it and liked what I played, but never really bothered to finish it. Now it's 2018 and I regret not hopping on the Yakuza train sooner, with my friends recommending me to play Zero last year, and me absolutely loving it. I now want to continue playing the rest of the Japan Simulator series to absorb all of its iconic characters and outlandish side quests that are cute, inspiring, and just flat out weird. The games weren't the only thing that were a sight for sore eyes on the PS3. The console itself was very familiar, and what I mean by that is it took all the things that made the PSP so amazing and expanded upon it. Its UI was neat and easy to navigate. You can have themes or even your own custom backgrounds that I would weeb up. You were able to play multiplayer games without a subscription fee, so it didn't dent the wallet, and for 18-year-old Gio at the time, that was a system seller. You could have a collection of classic games for affordable prices. I picked up the Ico and Shadow of the Colossus HD ports, and it was my first time playing them. I got really absorbed in its immersive worlds and simple gameplay mechanics. I was able to experience games that I've always wanted to play but ultimately left out in my childhood due to simply not being able to afford them when I was younger. And that's eventually what the PS3 became to me. It turned into a nostalgia box. Most, if not all, of the purchased games on my library are PS2 or PS1 classics. The PS3 is like one of the best ways to play most of the 3D Shin Megami Tensei games, and they're all like $10. That's like finding gold for me. I absolutely love SMT. It's like one of the most interesting game series you can stumble across, with loads of variety and storytelling and options for the player to mess with, while also covering a vast amount of genres with several spin-offs to dive and invest time into, which I'm actually doing a video on next, so be excited for that. Disgaea, a Japanese tactical JRPG series, is something I also fell in love with, playing Hour of Darkness on the PS3. Its tactical take on RPGs has some intricate concepts that are executed so well that it made me feel like I could really dominate the field so long as I took the time to really plan out a strategy, as the enemy could easily turn the tables on me. I also got to go back and try out Demon's Souls, which was very difficult. I didn't get too far. The OST, man. The OST is too good to ignore. I like the maddening trumpets of the opening, really iconic, and almost remind me of the Ava OST. Another one of the things my PS3 turned into was a definitive fighting game box. Having a get-together with a couple of friends? Time to plug in the PS3 and play some Third Strike with a couple of beers. Want some variety and extensive gameplay depth? Put on Capcom vs SNK 2, a game that features an enormous cast of iconic characters with 3-on-3 battles, several different gameplay styles to choose from and learn, and of course, Best Girl Yuri. Feeling an anime fighter? Arcana Heart 3 might suit your style with its own colorful cast of characters, unique combo strings, and the kinda confusing Arcana system that I'm still trying to get the hold of, and a little too much fan service. Now I know most of the fighting games I'm mentioning that you can download from PSN you can also get from the Xbox Live Arcade, but the PS3 is where I ended up playing them first, so that's why I bring them up. The PlayStation 3 is also easier than ever now to mod, and putting in a custom firmware will allow you to really explore your options with this thing. You could download games removed from PSN due to not renewing licenses, like, for example, the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 port, which is now impossible to get your hands on. Combo a modded CFW with a fat PS3, and you have a console that can emulate any PS2 game ever. You can also remove small stuff like HDCP, which is rather annoying when you're trying to gather footage, like gathering footage for this video. The modding community is just vast and interesting as well. Now before anyone comments, I'm not condoning piracy, but there are some things you just can't go out and buy for a reasonable price anymore. And with the generation moving on to new consoles, I think modding your older system helps retain and make ease of access to those relics without really damaging your wallet. I guess I could keep going on and on about the amount of value that you can get from this console, but I think you get the point from me just gushing on about it. I wanted to show my appreciation for the aging console, and now seemed like the best time due to the latest news, like the recent goodbye to the Demon's Souls servers. It was a signal to the beginning of the end. Plus, with no new game releases for the PS3 and the decline of online support, it really feels like we're reaching an end of an era, even though that era was reached at least 4 years ago? The point is, I really love this darn thing. It nuzzled its way into my heart, and I would recommend the PlayStation 3 to everyone, especially now as you can find it for pretty cheap at your local pawn shop. Its versatility is unmatched, and the PlayStation 3 is a console that shouldn't be forgotten as it held a lot of promise in its conception and did deliver on most of its concepts. It's something I still get use from even today. Its history is truly a cookie-cutter underdog story. A tanking console against all odds at the verge of failure, brought back to success by sheer luck and great games made by passionate and committed devs.